Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to the HSI Bible study with Megan and myself. We'll continue through our missionary discourse. We are still in the second missionary discourse where Jesus is actually explaining the cost of discipleship to his followers and telling them, that there will be a lot of persecution they will experience, not only from the religious leaders and from the governors and, but from within their own family. But he, tells them that to persevere, because the reward will they will definitely meet their reward at the end of time when, they will have their glory with him in heaven and they are assured of their salvation.
Yes.
So we'll continue, Megan, from verse 23 to 24, please.
Okay. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I tell you, you will not have gone through all of the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they malign those of the household? This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So after having spoken about the persecution and making them aware of it, you would expect, he also says, I'm sending you out as sheep. We see elsewhere he refers to himself as a shepherd. So Jesus, being a shepherd, every shepherd looks after his sheep, protects the sheep, and stays with them, correct? Jesus could have also protected them, right? Why does he tell them to flee from one, when you are persecuted in one town, flee to the next? I'm thinking that being the shepherd, his disciples are being persecuted, and instead of saving them or protecting them, he's asking them to flee to another place. So definitely there is some reason to it, because he can protect them. So one of the reasons is he's not asking them to flee out of fear of the persecution or fear of the suffering that they would go through, he tells, we saw also how the apostles later on, Paul and Peter, they were flogged and in the synagogues. And that was what they that was the fate that they would be met with. And he tells them, don't be fearful of this. Don't flee because of the fear of this, but flee because if you stay in that particular place, there is a danger to your life. You could be killed because your persecutors will not fall short of doing that. And if you are killed, then the main plan, which was of them spreading the gospel news, that would be aborted.
Because they wouldn't be able to
they wouldn't be able to go ahead and preach. So he says you flee because of joy that you want to proclaim my gospel everywhere. There is, to all the different places. So that's why he tells them to flee. Not because they were shunning persecution or they were fearing their death, so to say. Fearing the hardships that they would have to go through, but rather because they didn't want to be killed. There was lots of work to be done. The gospel had to be proclaimed, and they had to take it from place to place. Flee to the next, for truly I tell you. So he's assuring them, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So the Son of Man comes, he's referring to Jesus' second referring to his second coming. So he says, until that time, all of Israel, even if they move from town to town to town, until Jesus is coming, all of Israel will not have been converted. Not all will have accepted the message and accepted that Jesus is the Messiah. And by this signifying to them that the gospel message has to be preached even beyond Israel. The message has to go to different parts of the world. Has to be spread. So a twofold message that don't worry, move from place to place. There's lots of work to be done. Proclaim the gospel, and rest assured that even until my second coming, this work will not have been completed. Verse 24 says, "A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher and the slave like the master." Here Jesus is drawing the comparison between disciple and teacher and slave and master.
Yeah.
So what is the role of a disciple? It's always to learn, right? A teacher will teach, and a disciple aspires to gain as much knowledge as he can from his teacher. And what about a slave and a master? A slave, the master is a kind of a role model for the slave. He learns so many good things from his master. Can a slave be above his master, or a disciple above the teacher? No, it's not logical, right?
Yeah.
So Jesus is making this comparison, and he's trying to tell them that I myself have gone through so much of persecution. You have seen how I have been wrongly accused of blaspheming. You remember it was covered earlier in Matthew chapter 9, where we talk about where Jesus heals the paralytic, and he says to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven, and you are healed. Get up and walk. And all the Pharisees, what do they say? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God? So in other words, Jesus is calling himself God.
Yeah.
So and truly Jesus was God, because they couldn't recognize that he was God, and that's why he could do it. You know, they only looked at him as man and said that he's blaspheming. Yeah. So he was wrongly accused once there, and also later on in Matthew chapter 12. We see where there's a a person who has a demon and is blind and mute, right? And what do they say?
They also say that they call him Beelzebub, right? Because they said in his name he's casting out these demons.
Yeah. So who was Beelzebub? Basically, Beelzebub was referred to as the prince of demons.
Yeah.
But there's a little story to Beelzebub. Actually, it was the god Baal, the pagan god Baal, and he was a Canaanite god. And the Israelites, because pagan god, of course, and they want to ridicule, they would call Beelzebub, meaning the lord of flies.
Okay.
Flies are like really scum insects and cause infestation, and they're very unclean.
Yeah.
So, as a kind of a scorn, they would say Beelzebub.
Okay.
And later on that translated to Beelzebul. So, I'm sure to the pagan gods, it must have been the Lord of the Mighty or something, meaning, but how the Israelites changed that terminology. And later on we see when they say that Jesus has cured by the power of Beelzebub, they are referring to Jesus as doing miracles with the power of demons. Of demons.
Yeah.
So Jesus, in other words, is telling his disciples, I have been so ridiculed, I have done such great wonders and mighty miracles and healings, but they are attributing it to the demons. Yeah, if this is my fate, you know what fate you can expect. You are my disciple. Don't expect something better off than this, and be prepared that you will also meet with this kind of rejection, this kind of insults. But be prepared to go through this. This is the type of persecution that you will also face. You will also be called blasphemers when you start doing miracles in my name. Is this an easy teaching, Megan?
No.
I mean, why would someone want to be Jesus' disciple, right?
Especially when we learned, like few classes ago with Glenn, like the persecution that the apostles went through, and about their life and the journey and how they were martyred. that itself was eye-opening for me. And when we all as Christians are called into this journey and this mission of Christ, and then we have signed like an unspoken document saying that.
Disclaimer.
So imagine we are all called to be martyrs of Christ, right? But that how many of us will truly want to walk in the shoes of any one of these apostles?
Yeah, that's true. But we'll see later on as we proceed. Jesus this is the cost, this is the price, but he says, do this in my name, do this for my sake.
Yeah.
You know, you have been with me, you know that I am God, I have the power. And the Spirit, my Spirit, you know, he this in this last few verses, he foretells what will happen later on, because by the power of the Spirit they will have that courage and that strength to bear it all. So in a way, yes, we are being prepared for the persecutions or the opposition that we will face from people who are unbelievers or who don't think like us or think on the lines of Jesus. But we know that we have to aspire for our heavenly reward, our eternal salvation, our being one with Jesus eventually. That is more important than the little few pleasures that we may have here. So with that, let's keep our smiles and our chins up and look forward to what Jesus has to tell us tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Bye.